So that GFCI outside the back of the shop on the wall there, that one's deader than a doornail. So I thought, gee, I wonder. I've got electric to everything in the shop. I want to check that other room in the house and see. So I go and I take my little GFCI tool with the little flashy lights on there that tell me whether it's wired correctly or not, and I sticking it in the outlets, and bingo, it's perfect. It's working. So I try the next one. Bingo, it's working. I try the next outlet. Bingo. And I'm going around the room and I'm checking outlets and I stick it in one of the outlets. Bingo, it's perfect. I pull it out of the outlet and pooh! I get a little spark and it blew the circuit breaker. So I now know that in that outlet there's a short. Welcome to 3D Accuracy, where I'll talk about 3D printing, 3D product design, and 3D injection and die-cast mold design. Here's the outlet that's in the house, and I don't see any indication of a spark. I don't see any like black mark or anything of that nature. I don't see anything that looks like a short. So what I'm going to do, and it appears to be wired correctly, so I don't know if the outlet is defective or if there was some sort of a short inside someplace. So what I'm going to do is go outside and flip the circuit breaker and see if it stays on. If it does, then that would kind of indicate that there was some sort of a short, and by me repositioning the wires and pulling things, moving them around a little bit, it may have fixed that. I don't know. But before I opened this up and I tried turning the circuit breaker back on, it immediately flipped it off again. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can get the circuit breaker to stay on and if the outlet works. And I'll carefully plug the ground fault, the GFCI tool in the outlet and see if it does it again or not. I plugged it in this top outlet and it popped. So, and I saw a spark as I was pulling it out. I could definitely see it made a spark. So anyway, I'll try that. I'll turn on the circuit breaker and see what happens. So let's open up this panel and you can see the circuit breaker is tripped here. Let me turn this back on. Let's see what happens. Now it didn't trip off. I repositioned the wires on that outlet in the house. Now it appears to be okay. So let's go back in the house and check that outlet again and see. Well, first, I got the tool. I got the GFCI tool sitting on the floor in the house. So let's go do that one first. So I turned the circuit breaker back on and it didn't trip off. This is the outlet that's in the house that caused the problem. When I plugged this in the last time and pulled it out, it made a spark. So I know this is hot. I've got electricity here, so I want to be real careful, but I'm going to go ahead and put this in and see if we get a problem again. Can I get it in there? Not easy. There we go. Okay, now it's not all the way in, but both lights are lit. It's wired correctly. Now when I pulled it out the last time, it went pooh! It made a spark. I saw a spark here at the outlet and it blew the circuit breaker. Then when I went to turn the circuit breaker back on, it immediately tripped it again. So let's see if I can get this out of here. Maybe it's okay now. Let's try the one on the bottom carefully. That one's on and okay. Put that one in a little deeper and it's okay. Let's pull it out. Bingo. Must have been something in the back. The wires must have touched, although I see no indication of that. So what I'm going to do is reposition the wires a little bit, put this back together, check what. First I'm going to go out and flip the circuit breaker off so the electricity is off. Then I'm going to put this all back in there and screw it down and turn the circuit breaker back on and come test it again. So this may have been the cause of the problem. So it may just have been this outlet. Now, when I reposition this and put it back in there, if it does it again, then I'm kind of thinking this outlet might be defective and I may need to replace this outlet, which is easy to do. Only a couple of connections and bingo, bingo, you're done. Okay, so I'm going to go out, turn off the electricity, reset this, and test it one more time, see what happens. I have the electricity off. But first thing I'm going to be sure just to make sure is turn back on my little voltmeter. Okay, be sure to set it to AC instead of DC so I'm not reading wrong information. And then let's check this again and see that we have no voltage so I don't get a big shock. It should be off. I know because I turned on the light switch at the back of the shop and the light outside didn't go on. So it should be off, but we'll check it anyway just to be sure. Always be safe, right? Okay, 0.7 volt, 0.2 volt, 0.6 something volt. So it's off. Now, what I want to do is push these wires back in there, but I want to reposition them just in case there was something that was touching that I can't see. It doesn't look like it. I don't see anything that's obviously a short of any kind. There's nothing in the box, no pieces of wire, no metal, nothing of that nature. It's empty outside of dust from the drywall. So let's see if we can just push this all back in there and it doesn't give us any more troubles. All right, now let's get this guy up this way. I'm hoping this is going to do it. I don't know if none of the connections were loose. Nothing was touching that I could see, but I definitely got a spark out of it. I saw it when I was checking this one. And it tripped the circuit breaker as soon as I pulled out the little GFCI tool. Okay, that's all in. Little cover on. There we go. Okay, now I'll go turn the power back on and hopefully the circuit breaker doesn't trip and we'll come test these again. And if they work, then we cross our fingers and hope, okay, we fixed it. But I am suspicious if it trips again that maybe this outlet is faulty inside. Something's not right. But one step at a time. Let's turn the power on and see what happens. Back at the breaker box. Let's go ahead and flip this guy on and see if it stays on. Okay, bingo. Maybe we fixed it. Let's go in and test them again, check them, and see how that works out. You can see here how I know the electricity is on. You see the light is off. And then I flip the switch here on the inside. And the light is on. It works again. Hooray! Okay, turn this guy off. We don't need the light on now. It's light outside. Okay, so first I'm going to check and see with the little voltmeter, make sure we've got voltage where the electricity comes from. Get in there. What do we have? 119.0 volts. Can you see that? Can you see that on there? Okay, let's check the other one. Should be the same. Although this is the one that flipped it last time, 119 volts. All right, now we'll check it again with this tool, with the GFCI tool. make sure it's wired correctly. Now before, when I put that in there, both lights came on correctly like this, like it should, and I took it out and I plugged it in this one. Both lights come on again, so they're correct, it's wired correct. When I pulled it out, that's when it blew the circuit breaker before. It's good. So apparently, there was something in the box that was touching that shouldn't have been, or the outlet's a little iffy, but it definitely flipped the breaker, and then it didn't want to come back on again until I took the box apart and repositioned the wires. So I guess that cures it for now, but I'll keep an eye on it. If it happens again, then I know there's something going on here. Okay, so I'm going to consider this problem solved for now, and we'll move on to the next one. See if I can get that GFCI out in the shop fixed. But not critical that I do that today, but I want to maybe, it's getting towards evening, close to dinner time. I don't know, Laupo, when are we going to eat dinner? Soon? Soon eat dinner or a little later?
Don't know.
Don't know? Okay, so maybe I have time to play with the GFCI out in the garage, maybe not. When she calls me, I have to stop. Dinner's ready, I have to stop. Go run and eat yummy dinner. Okay, that's it for this. Back out in the shop. Well, that outlet works again. Isn't that nice? Now the light on my workbench works. So much better. I can see what I'm doing. Okay, now the last problem with this particular circuit here is this GFCI outlet here. Okay, so how do we attack this? I'm thinking best thing to do, this one doesn't work at all. If I press the reset or the test, nothing happens. If I press the reset, nothing happens. And when I plug in the little, where's my GFCI tool here? When I plug this guy in, I get nothing. Get in there. See? Nothing. So this outlet is dead. It's passing electricity on to the rest of the circuit, but it's definitely not going through this GFCI outlet. Now, like I mentioned before, it is wired incorrectly according to the instructions that I received on this other one that I purchased before. If I wired it correctly, the GFCI outlet would work, but nothing downstream worked. It cut off all the other outlets, it cut off the light switch, everything was all dead. So, I don't know. I think what I'm gonna do is maybe I'll pull this 3D printer out so I can get at it a little easily. It's on rollers and it moves fairly easily, so I can get it out of here. Just slip it out. And then take a look at that, see how the wiring is. But first I'll go outside and turn off the circuit breaker again and make sure I've got no juice coming through the wires behind it before I start digging in there. So let's start there. I'll pull the printer out and turn the electric off, and then pull that outlet out of the wall and see what the wiring looks like. I'll start there. Perhaps when I put this new ground fault outlet in there before, I may have wired it incorrectly, although it was pretty straightforward. And it appears like some of the lines, the line from the circuit breaker goes in on the top, so you'd have the hot one here, which is the black, and the white one on this side, and then the load, which goes to the rest of the circuit, exits on this side. So the black wire from the rest of the outlets go to this one, and the white wire goes to this one. That takes care of the rest of the outlets downstream. So unless I pick the wrong wires by mistake, which is possible, I could have reversed them somehow so that I was putting Well, let's take a look at it. Let's start there. I'm not sure exactly what happened because it was a while back that I did that and it didn't work, but everything else downstream did, so I thought, well, okay, I'll get to that later. Well, today's the day has finally come to get at it, so let's see what we can do. I got called for dinner, so a little short break there, but let me show you what I did before my wife called me. I got the 3D printer pulled out so I can get at this outlet, and I turned off the circuit breaker, so you see the lights out, everything's dead, and I checked it again to be sure, just in case. I checked it at the source wires, and this ground fault outlet is definitely wired incorrectly. You see, both leads, both black leads, go to the connections on the bottom, and nothing goes to the connections on the top. And per the instructions, which I have with the new ground fault outlet that I had purchased a while back, and I assume they would all be the same, because they would have to meet some sort of a standard. They couldn't all be a little different. It wouldn't make sense. So anyway, according to this, the wire from the circuit breaker box comes in, and those wires, the black and the white, connect to the line, which is the connections at the top of the connector. So in other words, the black one needs to connect here on top, and the white one needs to connect on top on this side, that come from the circuit breaker, from the box. So I'm assuming this Romex wire here on the left is coming from the circuit breaker. It would make sense. And the one on the right is going to the outlet down the way. So I'm going to move those up. I'm going to take those wires off and move them up to where they belong. Now, I also discovered that the little cap, the little protective cap, was not on the grounding wire, on the grounding wires. It's right here. I've got it on the bench, but it was sitting down in the bottom of the box, and I don't recall that being like that last time, although I may not have noticed. It was just something I quickly took a look at and played with, and it didn't work, so I just left it alone for at that time. So anyway, I've got to get that shielded correctly, get that little connector back on there to hold those. The ground is connected correctly underneath on the bottom, so I'm okay there. I'm just going to reconnect these wires the way they should be. And then I was also reading in the instructions, there's a specific procedure for testing the connections on the ground fault. And so what I have to do is follow these instructions, and it says it will not reset if it's not wired correctly or you don't do it in the proper sequence. So previously when I messed with it, I may not have reset it correctly, done the test and reset correctly, which of course would make it so that the ground fault connector worked, but nothing else downstream would work. So I'm going to go through this procedure, this test procedure, make sure that I've done this part correctly, and I'm hoping that's going to cure the problem, that there's nothing wrong with the ground fault connector itself, it's just the wiring was off. And this is the way it was wired when the first time I looked at this. I did not do this originally. I moved the wires back to where they should be, but it didn't work right, and I just put them back because I was in a hurry. I had other things to do. But obviously what's happening is the power from the circuit breaker box is just going directly down the line. It's bypassing this ground fault connector altogether. It should come in at the top, go through the ground fault connector, and then the power should come out at the bottom to feed everything else downstream. So I'm going to correct this first, and then go through the test procedure and make sure I do that properly. I need to plug a light into it. So what I'm going to do is take my light here, unplug it from over there, plug it into this outlet, and then do the test procedure and see if that fixes it. And I think it will. Well, let's put it this way. I'm hoping it will, because I'd like to finish this project for the day and be done with it. So let me switch some wires and we'll do some testing and we'll see what happens. I have the GFCI outlet in there. It is wired correctly. And I got the screw on the top in. The screw on the bottom won't go in because the box behind it with the threads in it appears to be stripped, and I can get the screw into the hole, but it won't thread in. It appears like the threads are out of it, and so I can't get that in. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn on the power, and then we'll go through this test procedure. I'm going to read these instructions first and see exactly what they say, and that way I make sure I'm doing it correctly. So before I turn the power on, I'm going to read through this and make sure that I get it set up, because I may need to plug the light in before I plug it in, or I mean may need to plug a light into it before I turn the power back on. So I'm going to read this first and then get it set up, and we'll give it a test and see what happens. Hooray! Hallelujah! It works! Got it fixed. The GFCI outlet now functions properly. Let me show you what I have here. I have the power on. You see the little green button on there. The little green light, not button, the little green light is on and functional. When I press test, it shuts it all down. When I press reset, it turns it all back on. All the other outlets work. The light is plugged in there. It works now. All the other outlets work. The light outside, you can see it's on. The light outside now works correctly. So everything is functioning nicely and the way it should. Everything in the shop, all the outlets are back up and functional now. So, I am pleased you won't believe. So I'm really happy that worked out. I followed the instructions on the booklet, or on that little instruction sheet that I got. Now that came with the new one, not with the old one that's in the wall that I actually used. But I thought, well, maybe the procedure is exactly the same for that one, so I'll give it a try and see what happens. And sure enough, it worked. So now all the circuit breakers in the box are working, everything's on. But the lights in front of the shop, they're not working, and they have never worked. And I think it has to do with this GFCI outlet that's here in the back behind the shop. So I do have this other one, this new one that I purchased a while back, and I'm going to see tomorrow if I can swap this out with the one that's in the wall back there and see if I can get it to work. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you're ever in need of 3D product design, 3D injection mold design, 3D die-cast mold design, or 3D printed prototypes or production parts, please feel free to contact me. You can find contact information in the video description. I look forward to hearing from you and to being of service to you. Thank you for watching. As always, I appreciate it. See you on 3D Accuracy's next video.